My dear friends, before you were ever born, before your first breath filled your lungs, a purpose was placed within you, a light, a calling, a divine whisper that said, you are here for more than survival. You are here for impact. Tonight, I speak not merely to your ears, but to your soul. I speak to that deep place within you where truth cannot be silenced and conviction cannot be ignored. Look around you. This world groans beneath the weight of brokenness. The hearts of men are failing. Families are falling. Justice is weeping in the streets. Kindness is becoming a rare treasure. Personal accountability is non-transferable. Personal accountability is not a concept meant for convenience. It is a sacred weight, a responsibility etched into the very soul of every individual. It cannot be outsourced, deferred, or delegated, no matter how clever the excuses, how detailed the blame, or how convincing the denial. The truth remains firm and unmoved. What is yours to carry, no one else can bear for you. We live in a time where passing the burden has become an art form. When things go wrong, the instinct is to point the finger elsewhere. If a home is broken, the blame goes to the system. If a young heart is lost, we blame the media. If society falters, we accuse the leaders, the laws, or the legacy of those before us. Yet the truth that burns beneath all the noise is this: we are each responsible for the choices we make, the words we speak, and the silence we permit. Accountability isn't about guilt. It's about ownership. It's not about taking on more than what is yours, but never stepping away from what is. There is a quiet strength in the soul of a person who refuses to run from their part in the story. That person understands that even when the world is loud with distraction and despair, their inner compass must remain clear and unshaken. Accountability means you stop waiting for someone else to do what only you were made to do. It means no longer saying, they should fix it, but instead declaring, I will be part of the answer. This kind of responsibility transforms lives. It turns ordinary people into leaders, servants into liberators, and bystanders into history makers. When you embrace personal accountability, your life begins to speak a different language. Instead of reacting to life, you respond to it. Instead of blaming circumstances, you rise above them. You see your failures not as fatal flaws, but as lessons handed down to sharpen your character and deepen your integrity. Personal accountability is not about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about owning your reactions, your growth, and your presence. It requires you to stop hiding behind titles, excuses, and distractions, and start facing the mirror with boldness and truth. It demands that you stop expecting the world to change for you and start becoming the kind of person who changes the world around you. Many people fear accountability because they associate it with shame. But personal accountability is not the voice that condemns. It's the voice that calls you higher. It's the whisper that says, you were made for more than this. It does not chain you to your past. It gives you authority over your future. When you claim your responsibility, you are no longer at the mercy of other people's decisions. You become the architect of your response, the captain of your character. In families, accountability heals. In relationships, it builds trust. In workplaces, it creates excellence. In communities, it produces peace. But none of this happens when people wait on others to act. It happens when one by one, individuals make the quiet, private, powerful decision to show up differently. to speak with kindness, to lead with integrity, to love with patience, to admit when they're wrong, and to forgive when they are wronged. It is tempting to believe that our actions are small, that they do not matter in the grand scheme of things. But the greatest revolutions begin with a single decision to do the right thing. Personal accountability might not always be visible, but it is always powerful. The choices you make when no one is watching will shape the kind of person you become when the world is. There is a deep kind of freedom that comes when you stop giving others control over your story. When you stop saying, "They made me angry," and start saying, "I chose how to respond." When you stop saying, "I didn't have a choice," and start acknowledging, "I always had one. I just didn't like the cost." That is the moment you step into maturity, into influence, and into strength. You don't need perfection to be accountable. You just need courage. The courage to face yourself, to grow, to change, and to keep moving forward no matter how many times you've fallen. The beauty of personal accountability is that it invites others to do the same. When you own your mistakes with humility and grace, you give others permission to be human. When you take responsibility without making excuses, you raise the standard for everyone around you. You show what it looks like to lead, not by force, but by example. This is not weakness. It is one of the rarest and most profound forms of strength. We live in a culture that celebrates influence, but true influence begins with internal accountability. It is built not on charisma, but on character, not on performance, but on principles. When you accept that personal accountability is non-transferable, you become someone that others can count on. Someone who brings stability in chaos and clarity in confusion. Your presence becomes a refuge, your word becomes a promise, and your example becomes a guide. This kind of living isn't always easy. There will be days when accountability feels like a weight too heavy to carry. Moments when you want to retreat into old patterns and point outward instead of inward. But every time you choose to face your responsibility head on, something inside you grows stronger. You become more aware, more compassionate, more authentic. You no longer need to defend your actions with excuses because your actions start to speak for themselves. Personal accountability is not a burden. It is a gift. It is the bridge between who you are and who you are meant to be. It is the light that shows you the path forward when the world around you is dark. And once you embrace it, you will never again be satisfied with blame, with delay, or with denial. One person can ignite transformation. There is a myth that transformation requires an army. He says that it takes the masses to shift the course of history. That change must roar through the streets with banners and parades. But if you trace the roots of every revolution, every revival, every reformation, you will find it began with one soul who said yes. One voice that refused to stay silent. One heart that dared to believe things could be different. One person can ignite transformation, not because they are perfect or powerful, but because they are willing. Throughout history, time and again, the most profound shifts have come not from great numbers, but from great courage. One mother who refused to give up on her child. One teacher who saw the future in a forgotten student. One leader who spoke truth in the face of danger. One stranger who offered kindness that saved a life. One person who simply could not ignore the call burning inside of them. It is not about how many follow you. It is about how deeply you walk in truth. People often wait for someone else to take the lead, hoping that someone stronger, smarter, louder, or more capable will come along. But what if the very transformation this world needs is waiting on you, not someone else? You, the one who's scared, the one who feels small, the one who wonders if they matter. You don't need the spotlight to light a fire. You just need the spark of belief, the fuel of purpose, and the breath of action. And the flame will rise. We underestimate the influence of a single life. But transformation doesn't begin in the crowd. It begins in the heart. It begins when one person chooses love over indifference, action over comfort, conviction over convenience. It begins the moment you stop saying, "What can I do?" and start saying, "What must I do?" You may not be able to fix everything, but you are not powerless. In fact, your willingness to show up is what creates the space for everything else to begin. One person's decision to rise can set off a chain reaction. Courage is contagious. Compassion spreads. Truth resonates. When you stand, others take notice. When you give, others are inspired. When you refuse to back down, others find their own spine. And soon, what started as a single flame becomes a wildfire of transformation that cannot be contained. Don't wait for your life to be perfect before you make a difference. Don't wait until you feel ready, qualified, or worthy. Transformation doesn't come through flawless vessels. It flows through surrendered ones. Your flaws do not disqualify you. They often prepare you. Your pain becomes empathy. Your struggle becomes strength. Your healing becomes hope for someone else. You don't have to be the answer to everything. You just have to be the answer to something. There is a world of difference between someone who complains and someone who commits. One person who says, "Enough is enough," and means it, can shift the tide in a family, a school, a workplace, a city. One person with the humility to listen, the boldness to speak, and the persistence to act becomes a living invitation for others to do the same. That's how movements begin. Not with masses, but with momentum. It doesn't matter where you come from or how loud your voice is. What matters is what you do with what you've been given. Some of the greatest transformations the world has seen were started by people who had every reason to stay quiet. They had no position, no fame, no support, no security. But they had a conviction that would not let them rest. They had a vision that burned brighter than their fear. And they chose to act. There is something sacred about the moment one person decides they can no longer live as they used to. That moment becomes a line in the sand, a turning point, a declaration. That moment says, "I will not be a bystander. I will not close my eyes. I will not shrink to make others comfortable. I will not wait for permission to do what is right." That moment, though quiet, echoes with power. Because once you've crossed that line, you can never go back to who you were. Transformation does not ask for qualifications. It asks for surrender. It asks for availability. It asks for someone who will simply say, "Use me." The world needs fewer experts and more servants, fewer critics and more builders, fewer spectators and more initiators. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few, not because the work is impossible, but because too many have forgotten that one person can make all the difference. You may not see the fruit of your labor right away. That's the beauty and burden of transformation. Sometimes the tree you plant today won't bear fruit for years. but plan it anyway. Sometimes the words you speak will echo in silence before they find a heart ready to receive them. But speak them anyway. Sometimes your act of kindness will be overlooked or rejected. But offer it anyway. Because transformation isn't measured by applause. It's measured by impact. The world doesn't need more people waiting for someone else to go first. It needs someone who will step forward even when no one follows, yet someone who will believe when no one else does, someone who will hold the line when everyone else walks away. You can be that someone. You were born with that capacity. The same fire that burned in the hearts of world changes before you burns in you now. Don't extinguish it with fear. Don't smother it with excuses. Let it burn. Let it rise. The truth is, you may never fully see the ripple effect of your life. You may never know how your decision to act inspired someone else to find their courage. But rest assured, your obedience to what is right, to what is true, to what is good, will never return empty. One person, just one, can begin the transformation this world is aching for. That one person can be you. So now the question rests not in the heavens, not in the halls of power, not in the crowd around you, but in your own heart. What will you do with the time? The voice, the strength you've been given. Will you walk past the need, waiting for someone else to rise, or will you be the one? You don't need all the answers. You don't need permission. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. You are the moment. And so I say to you, with every ounce of urgency in my voice and every thread of hope in my heart, do not wait. Do not doubt. Do not waste another moment believing the lie that your life is too small to matter. Stand up. Speak out. Love deeply. Act boldly. Because this world, as broken as it may be, is still waiting for light to break through the cracks. And if you're willing, just willing, to be the one, then history will remember that in a time of silence, you spoke. In a time of fear, you stood. In a time of darkness, you became the flame.